Hi, Jamie with UK Extension, and today we're going to have a little fun because we're actually doing some hands-on stuff. We're talking about succulents, and succulents are so cool. They're wildly popular. You literally see racks of succulents at supermarkets, home improvement. Quite frankly, it's hard to go anywhere without bumping into succulents. And you can find them in all different sizes. They're not terribly expensive, and they are so easy to grow as long as you keep some things in mind. We're going to show some examples of planters that have been potted for a little bit to give you a few ideas, but let your imagination run wild. Succulents can dry out between waterings a little, so they're suitable for all sorts of tiny containers. As long as there's drainage and loose, well-drained soil. If you're worried about drainage, we're going to be using professional potting mix today that has a lot of perlite, so it's naturally well drained. If you have another soil, or even this, would not be harmed by the addition of some fine gravel, very coarse sand, or even chicken grit, which is finely ground granite grit, makes a nice mix, and you might want to add 20% of that to the mix. So drainage and soils are important. So I have seen beautiful ones in seashells, as long as you drill a drainage hole. Tiny little things like old boots and sneakers, succulents can go most anywhere. We're going to show you some things that have been potted up just a little bit with some interesting things in them here. We'll be providing you a grouping similar to this of small pots for your own project at home. They will very quickly grow into specimen sizes like what you see in these other planters, and they're super easy. One thing I want to caution you about right out of the gate is that succulents are not cacti, and it's very easy to make that leap. While succulents do occur in those full sun, hot, arid climates that cacti do, many of the succulents we can buy are not from areas that are full sun plants. So I would strongly suggest you avoid hot afternoon sun. A little morning sun is great, light shade is wonderful, and that will help your plants to stay beautiful and healthy and not actually sunburn, which can be a problem. So we're going to do some potting, and we're doing the most basic of the basic today in little round pots. Quite honestly, if I were at home, this would never happen. I'm too creative. I know you are too. So use your imagination to do fun, creative things. So this is a pot size. This is an 8-inch clay pot. These are called half pots or bulb pans because they're so squat. Succulents, if you put them in traditional deep pots, often will have so much moisture in the soil it's too much. So shallow, smaller amounts of soil work better. We're going to start potting, and it's just a matter, love these little jade plants. These are essentially rooted cuttings. Succulents are so easy to propagate. Forgive me here, but it is literally a little piece of any of it broken off, just about any of it. The rosettes are a little more challenging. You simply remove lower leaves, lay it somewhere for a few days to dry. You want this wound to callus. It's better to cut with shears than pinch like I just did, which mashes some tissue, but they're so tough it doesn't matter. Little tiny bits like this, laid to dry for a day or two, and then potted, will almost immediately root and make new plants. So that's essentially what you're receiving, is a larger rooted cutting that's been grown for a little bit, and depending on the size, mature size and type of succulent, some of them may appear quite small at this point. Some of the succulents we're providing for those of you who are participating in this workshop will actually be winter hardy, and we're going to try to mark those for you with a little plastic pick in case you want to separate out the ones and know which can stay outdoors. Honestly, they're so affordable, I usually just treat them all as annuals. Pot them up, put them out, leave them through the winter, and go buy more. It's not hard to do. And if you've ever overwintered a very high light plant like this, you'll know that succulents are somewhat forgiving, but they rarely make really good houseplants unless you have extremely bright light. So if the roots are really tangled, which they rarely will be with these succulents, you want to loosen them a little. But it's important we pot this at basically the same depth it was growing previously. And I'm just going to start putting some of these in. There's some things you may want to keep in mind, like these beautiful little things that are obviously going to be more trailing. They can go near the edge, but a trailing plant planted in the center of a pot forms a ground cover and will give you this interesting little mass. I'm going to try and locate this one where it does a little of both. It do some ground cover, and then it will spill over the edge as it grows. If they break a little bit, don't freak out. Just put those pieces back in the soil and they will root too. It's very easy to get this done. Quite honestly, this is the boring part. The fun part is finding all the weird containers and driftwood and rocks and other cool stuff you might want to add into these mixes. As I'm planting or potting, I like, with anything, not just succulents, I like to keep contrast in mind. And by contrast, I mean two things. I mean color contrast, green against silvers and lighter colors, but also contrast of textures. If everything is all rosette next to rosette, it's much more boring than if you do rosette against something with a different texture or different color. So there's a little tip for you, and I do the same planting flowers, I do the same in landscapes. It's all about contrast. Contrast gets your attention. Too much contrast can be a bad thing. So this is a hen and chicks. There are many rosettes. Some of you, most everybody will get at least one or two of these. They are winter hardy, but they'll be marked, and they're very easily confused with some others that look almost identical but are not winter hardy, and that's why we'll mark them for you. Here's another little trailing one. I happen to know this one is winter hardy, but if you receive one, it'll have a stick in it not telling you, but a plastic pick to show you which is winter hardy. If you go out shopping for succulents, you should pretty much assume that most of those big displays we see are going to be non-hardy succulents. So those will likely not overwinter, and I would treat them as annuals. If you do want to try and overwinter, keep them as cool as pot. We want them not to grow in the winter. Growth in the winter with low light is the enemy. So we're going to keep them even drier than usual, but not to the point that they completely desiccate. And we're also going to put them in the coolest, brightest spot in our home that we can find for the winter months. So it looks a little jumbled now, but you can make a beautiful planter. It's as simple as that. Let me clean up here just a little bit. And the other fun thing is you can adding the embellishments is my favorite part. So you can, and if you have a big something, like this is a little piece of quartz, if you have a larger something, you may want to put that in before you start potting. But just a rock, it can be off-centered, it doesn't matter where it goes, the succulents will fill in, but whatever you think is interesting. And then the other thing that's kind of important to me in finishing succulent planters, I want some mulch, I want some gravel. It's not necessarily because it's required, it just makes things look so much better. This is just a little pea gravel you can buy. If you're doing this with kids, or you're one of those psychedelic hippies like me, you might want to go to a pet store with your children and look at all those inexpensive, wildly colored aquarium gravels. Kids can have a ball with rainbow mulch and other things, as can you. All the aquarium gravels are not tasteless fluorescent pinks. Many of them also come in blacks, grays, and more appropriate things. But that's where you're going to find your real assortment of all different kinds of things to put on the bottom. And you can just see how much more finished this looks once you get everything mulched. And when I water this in, don't worry if you get some soil in here. You can rinse that out gently when you water. But that, to my eye, is a little more appealing than if we had not mulched. Or, see, broke one. Oh, made another one. Wow. That simple. So you can do something like this. You also have the option, if you prefer, it can be really fun. I'm going to use this pot for something else, but you could go into one individual pot, and about a 4-inch would be small. Whenever we repot plants, any plants, you don't jump sizes. To put this in here and then water heavily, this might rot. Appropriate size pots, you always go to the next size up, and these will thrive. So they would be good individually in a 4 to 6-inch pot for the summer. If you want, because succulents are available all over the place these days, you can find and purchase larger succulent plants that you can combine with your smaller ones from class, and that can be kind of fun as well. Or you can mix and match any way you wish to do. I'm going to tell you today that the succulents we sourced for your workshop, these tiny little pots, came from Mountain Crest Gardens. They actually have a retail site. We paid wholesale prices for these, but you can go and order individual trays, individual plants, probably $4 or $5 each. Not hard to do, and that's really not necessary if you're venturing out into public. You'll see them everywhere for similar prices. So you buy whatever you see that strikes your fancy. This would be an interesting one. I might add more than the 6 or so plants you guys receive to something this big, but it provides opportunities. I'm also going to show you something really neat. Thanks to the many, many wonders of the World Wide Web, or internet, interwebs, whatever you want to call it, we have access to so many things these days. And this pot is actually one I made, very easy to do. It's called Hyper Tufa, Hypertufa. There are, I won't say millions, there are dozens of YouTube videos and different recipes you can find. This is essentially Portland cement, peat moss, and in this case it is perlite. But you add the peat moss, which is the bigger, bulkier element, some cement, and some aggregate, and you end up, this also had a little colorant, which you can buy for concrete, in it to make it this deeper gray color, otherwise it would be paler. These extremely porous, the peat moss in here rots away, as do some of these little sticks and things. It provides excellent drainage. Tufa was actually a naturally, and is actually a naturally occurring marine product that is very light and porous. This is a fake tufa, or a hyper tufa. Check that out, and you can make these in any shape, size, form you want. It's like playing with modeling clay. So I had one of these, and I'm going to do something a little more creative that might give you some ideas. And please don't think this is the pinnacle of creative. It's not. You can go so many more places. But I rooted around in some fence rows at the farm. You'd be surprised what you can find in your own backyard, in abandoned ditches, all over the place. There's fun rocks and stuff that would work for this. This is literally what I would call a type of urban rock, aka busted up concrete. But if you turn it right, it's very rock-like. And I'm just going to see if I can't find some visually appealing way to work those two things in, like that. And then in this case, I'm just coming back and tucking the little plants in between. Not hard to do at all. That was pretty silvery blue. Here goes a red one for some contrast. This is actually in the jade plant family. It's called Campfire. It's actually Crassula Campfire. Tiny little hens and chickens, which are fun. I'm going to put those over here. These I'm leaving slightly higher just because I'm going to add that gravel mulch. You can also stripe your mulch, make patterns with it if you're working with kids and colors. Go in here with this. And this little spiky Haworthia. I believe these are from Africa originally. And I'm going to stick him right in here by this rock because I think that will look cool. concrete, rock, whatever. So you can get even more interest by adding other natural elements for the sedums to grow up and through. And in this case, let me sprinkle a little of this lava rock. I personally prefer earth tones to bright colors for gravel. I like my flowers bright. But it's just a matter of working these rocks and pebbles in. I don't have enough of this to do the whole planter, but you'll get the idea. And that will make a very interesting, I missed one little plant. Let me tuck him in here real quick. So, to recap, well-drained soils, add grit or gravel or sand if you need to improve drainage. Perlite is a purchased product you can use. Well, I guess all those are purchased products. Make sure the soil is well drained. Make sure your seashell boots, whatever, have holes in them so the water flows freely away. I may have neglected to tell you that succulents, like cacti, even though they're not all full sun, store moisture in their leaves. So if you need to be away, if you're an absent-minded or itinerant plant caregiver, succulents are going to love you. You can go on vacation for 2 weeks and probably come back and no problems with your succulents. Your geraniums will be dead, but these won't. So many interesting textures, so many cool plants. Get out there and explore the world of succulents and have some fun with them. And still, send me your emails of your beautiful pots. I want to see what you're doing. Thanks. Get out and play with some succulents in this sunshiny summer and let me know how you do.